I still remember the exact moment my heart shattered in that cold, glass-walled office. My name is Emily, and for 6 years I poured my soul into that company. I was the first one in every morning and the last one out. I missed family dinners, canceled vacations, and worked through every weekend during peak season. I believed if I worked hard enough, I would be valued. But that afternoon, everything changed. I finally gathered the courage to ask for a raise. My rent had gone up, my mother's medical bills were piling up, and I was barely making it. I sat across from my boss, Mr. Richard Harlan, a man I once respected. With a trembling voice, I explained my situation. He leaned back in his expensive leather chair, looked me straight in the eyes, and laughed. "Stop complaining about money, Emily," he said with a smirk. "This is all you can handle right now. In this economy, be grateful you even have a job." His words hit me like ice water. The same man who praised me in meetings, who called me his most reliable employee, was now mocking my struggles. I felt small. I felt worthless. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of him. I simply nodded, whispered "thank you," and walked out of his office with my dignity barely intact. That night, I cried in my car for almost an hour. I felt betrayed by someone I had trusted for years. How could the person who saw me work through fevers, deadlines, and personal losses treat me like I was greedy for wanting a fair wage? But what I didn't know that day was that this painful moment would become the beginning of my awakening. The weeks that followed were some of the darkest I had ever known. Every time I walked into the office, I felt heavy. I kept doing my work perfectly, but something inside me had broken. The respect I once had for Richard slowly turned into quiet anger. I started noticing things I had ignored before. While he told me there was no money for raises, I saw him come back from week-long business trips that were clearly vacations. He bought a brand new luxury car and bragged about it in the office. He took the senior team to expensive dinners while the rest of us were told to tighten our belts. One evening, I stayed late to finish a project and accidentally found something that made my stomach drop while trying to pull up an old file on the shared drive. I discovered folders that weren't properly secured. Inside were records showing Richard had been shifting company funds into a personal account. Small amounts at first, but they added up. He was living lavishly while telling loyal employees like me that we had to accept less. The betrayal cut deep. This wasn't just about my raise anymore. He wasn't just a difficult boss, he was stealing from the company that so many families depended on. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my colleagues' single mothers, young fathers, people who trusted this company. I thought about how I had defended Richard when others complained. I felt foolish. The pain turned into something else. A quiet fire began burning in my chest. I was no longer just hurt. I was determined. I started documenting everything carefully. I saved records, took screenshots, and gathered proof without raising any suspicion. I worked during lunch breaks and late nights, all while keeping my performance perfect so no one would suspect anything. There were moments I almost gave up. The fear was real. What if I lost my job? What if no one believed me? But every time doubt crept in, I remembered his cold laugh and those words, "This is all you can handle." That sentence became my fuel. I realized I had spent years shrinking myself to fit into a place that never truly valued me. The woman who once cried in her car slowly disappeared. In her place, a stronger, wiser version of me was emerging. It took me almost 4 months to prepare everything. I didn't want chaos. I wanted justice. I quietly reached out to a senior HR executive in our parent company who had a reputation for integrity. I presented everything I had found clean, organized, and undeniable. 2 weeks later, everything changed. The company launched a full internal investigation. Richard was called into a meeting he thought was routine. When he walked out of that conference room, his face was pale. The smirk I once feared was gone. Within a month, he was removed from his position. The board discovered more than I even knew: years of financial misconduct. He wasn't just denied his golden parachute. He faced serious consequences. The man who once told me to be grateful suddenly found himself without the power he had abused. When the news spread through the office, the atmosphere completely shifted. Colleagues who had suffered in silence began speaking up. Several people came to me privately and thanked me. I didn't do it for praise, but hearing their words healed something deep inside me. A few months later, I was offered a much better position with a significant raise, not out of pity, but because they saw my dedication and integrity. Looking back now, I realized that painful moment in Richard's office was actually a gift. Sometimes the deepest betrayals become the strongest turning points in our lives. When someone tries to break your spirit and tell you this is all you can handle, it can become the very reason you discover how much more you're truly capable of. I no longer tie my worth to anyone's approval, especially not to those who never deserved my loyalty in the first place. If you're watching this and you're in a situation where someone is making you feel small, undervalued, or powerless, I want you to remember my story. Your pain has power. Your silence can become your strength. And sometimes, the most beautiful revenge isn't loud or destructive. It's simply refusing to stay broken and choosing to rise instead. Thank you for watching my story. If it touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear this message. You are worth so much more than they want you to believe.